This presentation is part of a workshop voicing indigenous food sovereignty struggles, which has been organized by the project Indigenous Food Systems in Transition, financed by Future Food at the Swedish University for Agricultural Sciences. Furthermore, the workshop was organized in collaboration with Case Study 18 of the Horizon 2020 Finance project Just North. You are welcome to listen to the lecture.
Time for Anna Skarin, professor in reindeer husbandry at the Swedish University of Agricultural Science. And she will give a presentation now on the impact of competing land uses on reindeer husbandry in Sweden. Welcome, Anna.
Thank you, Lena Maria. So, thank you for inviting me to talk at this workshop conference. Very nice to meet you all that are here in Uppsala and also online. So, I will talk about the impact on reindeer pasture. So it's already been brought up by several of the former speakers, like Peter and Helena talked about in Idre. They have big problems with using of the pasture due to disturbance from tourism, for example. And as Per mentioned, the forestry is a big issue. We have several projects where we have worked with the impact on the pasture and the use of the pasture by the reindeer, which is like the resource in the system, and the reindeer is really the harvester of this resource that we have. So, and this is just a side quotation by a Sami that were interviewed in our project on feeding of reindeer, and they said that if we don't have any pasture, we will never make it. So the pasture is kind of the key in this system. And there is a lot of other land use within the reindeer pastures that compete with the reindeer on using these areas. And I will try to dig in a little bit into this and how reindeer and reindeer husbandry are affected by other land use. So, and with focus on the reindeer husbandry area in Sweden, but this is of course very similar in Norway, Finland, and also in Kola, if we refer to the Sami reindeer area, but then also in the rest of the reindeer husbandry region in Eurasia, and also with other natural system, of course. But now focusing on competing land use here in the reindeer herding area in Sweden. And so there is a lot of competing land use, and the available pastures are declining due to different infrastructures that have increased during the whole 20th century, really. And we have fragmentation of the pasture, which was like the talk by Per, who explained very well about how forestry can impact the pasture. There is barriers in the landscape that hinders the reindeer from walking from one area to the next. And then there is also avoidance of pasture areas, which would be very good as pastures, but the reindeer don't want to be there because there is disturbance from other land users, and these could be mining, wind power, roads, and then recreation tourism and things like that. And there's been a lot of studies on this, how reindeer are disturbed by different pastures, and me and Birgitta made a review of this in 2014, where we summarized different disturbance studies on different disturbance sources that had been done. So we looked into the literature, and we found both for semi-domesticated reindeer and wild reindeer, which had also been summarized by others before, but comparing the effect of disturbances between wild reindeer and domesticated reindeer, we could see that it's quite similar, that the reindeer, independent of it, if it's domesticated or not, they are disturbed by different types of other land use. And these figures in red are newer data or studies that have come up after 2014, and there might be even more coming up than those summarized in this table. But we see that reindeer avoid different disturbances with kilometers in scale, and this of course makes quite a large effect if we have a map like this, where there's a lot of things going on all the time. And in addition to this, we also have climate change, which is happening with all over the globe, but it's going faster here in the Arctic. And we have winters with warmer temperatures, which makes the forage unavailable due to ice crust or deep snow. And this happens earlier in the season, so there could be a whole winter season where it's very hard for the reindeer to find the pasture. And in combination with other land use, it's also harder to find alternative grazing areas during winters when climate is, or when the weather conditions make it hard to find the lichen resources. And to exemplify this and how it can be, how it can look in different areas, I just want to give you an overview of a recent project where we have studied how wind power affects reindeer and the reindeer use of the pastures. And this is a project, a third or fourth project on wind power and reindeer, which we have been doing. Per Sandström has been in all of the projects also, and we have looked into how reindeer is affected by this new encroachment in the reindeer husbandry area. Just briefly about methods we have used that we have looked into. We have kind of gathered both quantitative data on the vegetation, distance to wind power, weather, and weather variations, etc. GPS data on reindeer, and then also qualitative data from reindeer herders describing how they use the areas and how they herd the reindeer in the landscape, which is very important to be able to interpret the GPS data and the analysis of the GPS data. So all this we have gathered, and then we have made models looking into how reindeer react to, with focus on wind power. But doing this, we also come in contact with all other disturbances, and quite fast we are into a very complex situation where we try to describe how reindeer react to different disturbance sources, not only wind power, and also in relation to climate change and weather, especially then. We also discussed the results with the herders, so we tried to okay, is our results reasonable, and does it seem to be something that is related to the reality that they are in? And then we have presented our results in the final report that actually was published just a few weeks ago. And to summarize the results, we have looked into the different seasons of the reindeer, and we have been in different herding communities. So for the snow-free season, we have looked into effects in Malå reindeer herding district in Västerbotten in Sweden. And here we could see that during calving period, reindeer clearly avoids areas close to wind power, especially open areas are more avoided. And they actually seek out areas where the topography is covering or shielding the wind power so that they don't see the wind turbines. The reindeer also increase the movement rate close to the wind power, and in relation to other land uses, they also avoid mines, roads, and power lines. In summer, we don't see a clear avoidance of wind power. Instead, we see that they actually go on using the area close to wind power, which is most likely explained by reindeer wanting to escape insect harassment, because these areas are high up in the terrain and important for them to use when there is a lot of parasites and insects in the air. We do see that the movement rate increases with sound level from the turbines during this time period. So they don't, and there is also an increased movement after the turbines are built compared to before. So they are not, before they also used this area, but they had a better grazing piece before during insect harassment in these areas. We also see that they still avoid mines, roads, power lines, and houses during this time period. And then in the autumn, in September to November, until the snow arrives, we also see, this is also from Malå reindeer herding community. We also see a decreased use of mires and forest close to the wind turbines. We don't see an increase in movement rate, so maybe they are kind of not as disturbed during this time period as during calving, for example. But they also avoid mines and large roads.
2 minutes left.
Oh, thank you. And then in the winter time, we see an increased movement with sound, and also, more importantly, increased workload for the reindeer herders trying to adapt to this use of the landscape. So now, and then there is also, in relation to predators, there is a interaction between how the reindeer use the area. And I just wanted to show you here more description from the reindeer herders, how they use an area during the winter. So this is in Tåssåsen reindeer herding community, one winter group. Here is the wind farm, and these dots are the GPS data. And just to give you a picture of how they move into this area in beginning of the winter. So now there's Swedish signs here, but try to explain. The reindeer move towards the wind farm in December, then they quickly move out. And here the roads from the wind farm end up in a big road where there's a lot of traffic. The weather changes and the reindeer also then move towards this road. There is a reindeer that are predator that are killed by lynx. Then there is reindeer that are hit by cars on the road. Even more reindeer hit by cars. The reindeer are somewhat also down here. And then there is still reindeer around this road and they are affected or hit by car. And then the reindeer herder tried to push back the reindeer into the wind area. They almost succeeded, but reindeer came back down to the road again. There is more predators in the area, and a wolf also appears. The lots of reindeer are killed. And yeah, this is how it can have been during a winter in this herding district. And when we looked into the statistics, we could also see that there was a lot more road kills after the wind farm compared to before.
I'm
So,
sorry,
yeah,
but yeah, the time is over, and it was so exciting, the wolves coming and everything in the map.
Yeah.
But can you wrap up in 30 seconds?
Yeah. So just so very quick. So the historical perspective in this. So now this is what's happening now, but this has been an increase during 100 years. There's been a change, and so where do we start to measure the change and the effect on the reindeer? Are we taking into account changes that have already happened, like hydropower, for example, or forestry that happened a long time ago? They are still affecting the reindeer husbandry.
I'm sorry,
so this is important to take into account.
Yeah.
Also, thank you.